I've never done this, so just bear with me. This is, I figured, Vida and I, figured that maybe I'll introduce my studio space to you. And trying to figure out how to, I guess it's going to have to be backward. So let me just walk through my studio right now and show you what it is exactly. Main bench. And I'm just gonna, it's about 800 to 1,000 square feet, so just bear with me. It's my third floor of the house. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the jewelry and metals studio, but main bench being, oh, where'd you go? So main bench being, a jeweler's bench and a silversmith's bench. There's the acid bench. And this is all right now in a little bit mayhem because I'm in the middle of moving my clean space, studio space out downstairs to the second floor. I have an office. So photography and office will be downstairs. And, the workshop will be up here. That right there is a 10-foot, 8-foot, I'm sorry, table, work table, which needs to be down. So basically everything that you see here on the floor and all that is supposed to be on that bench. Again, I'm not sure what you're, so that's the wax and model making table. And there is a lot of models and let's do it this way. So there's a lot of models and other types of materials. So I don't want to call it inventory, but it is that. And let me walk it through.
How long have you had your studio, Hratch?
It's 30 years now.
Wow, so, in the same space?
No. This is this is the newest, the latest, and basically I ended up purchasing a home about 15 years ago, and I didn't really, it wasn't my choice, but it ended up being a home, so the third floor suited me okay. Before that, I was in an industrial commercial space at about 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. So everything was very sprawled open. Now it's a little on top of each other. So, and that's why I'm pretty much trying to move my office and photography down to the second floor. I have an extra room in there. So, and this upstairs actually is a really nice living room. So with a wooden stove, and there is a deck outside. So I can do a lot of my wet work and stone cutting and acid work out there. So, but in terms of, so I have, this table here is the rolling mill table. Let me see if I can, yeah, so there's one, there's two, and the third mini one. I don't know if you saw that, but so these are each sheet metal, and then there's watt for the wire, and they're the largest you can get in industry, hand cranked. So, and what's moving down is basically the photography setup, and pretty much this entire room will be moving downstairs, I think. So the computer area and all of that. A little bit of mayhem, but I think this COVID thing really helped out a little bit. Started moving everything downstairs, and so it's kind of helping actually, instead of just sitting there and staring at it. And once it's cleared out, I like open spaces. This is a little too mayhemish for me, but I need to get through it. I was married. There was somebody else in the house, and that's pretty much what happened. Is I got to keep the house and my studio, and basically ended up. Then that's pretty much what I wanted, so that I can continue on working. It's served well. I just need to keep it moving forward. In terms of this little webinar, we were talking about just to have it an introductory to the classes coming after, and we figured wax, material, carving would be a really good way to go, since it's fairly available. It's easier to get. It's easier to work with. You don't need as many tools and equipment, and you don't need a shop like in a shop. If you even have a kitchen, table in your apartment, you can actually, work on wax. So the tools and everything I'm going to show you is basically 90% to 95% is unnecessary, to begin with. And I've seen some amazing things done with very minimal tooling. If you have a butter knife, you can work with that, and as a spatula, and heat it up. If you have a heat source, you can do that. And heat source being, your oven, your oven top, or just purchase a $5 alcohol lamp, from any hardware store or jeweler's supply, and that will do great. So as far as the tools themselves, in terms of waxwork, I'm just going to jump in so that we don't miss too much. There's a bit of material to cover, and I just want to have it out there to you guys so that you know what you're playing with or you're dealing with. In terms of the tools themselves, in terms of waxwork itself, there's cold work and hot work. Hot being, with a flame or with an electric, like a wood burning, tool that, that wood burning, art. So this is a little miniaturized one of those. It's basically a miniature lead soldering gun. I don't like using it, actually. I do have it, and that's for higher production work where you need it on at all times and you're working go. Versus the lamp, the alcohol lamp is great. I'll show you what it is, turn it on, and show you what it does right now. So the hot work, in terms of the hot tools, basically you can purchase a set from Rio Grande or any jewelry supply, and there's a lot of really cheapy ones. Anyone would do fine. The ones that I have that are my favorites are pretty much, homemade, and most of them I have made out of old dental tools that, I would get pretty much, I'd ask my dentist and they'll just give it away, because basically they end up.
No way. You just ask your dentist and he's like, yeah, have my tools.
It was, at times I would offer them money, like 25 cents. But, they wouldn't take it. So, and these are getting, what's happening now is with modern technology for dentists, these are getting a little bit rare because they're not using the same materials. They're actually, my latest visit, which was about a month ago, they're actually doing computer work and taking images from your teeth and then sending it out to labs, and it's getting, a spray cut or basically spray printed your teeth are in porcelain. So, and then baked, and then, it fits perfect. So they're not as tool oriented as, jewelry and dental, dental industry were very close in terms of tools. But most of my tools, I have a huge number. Again, where'd you go? I can't really. So I don't know if you can see all that.
Yep.
So, and I have, you know, basically even old files that I've actually made them into that, you know, just carved it down.
What do you carve them with?
Sanding discs that we have at the shop, you know, you can do, this is tool steel, that's the only reason. But I was gonna basically touch on the fact that this one is a favorite, and it is basically an old coat hanger. So if you have a wire cutter and a hammer, you can make this. And it's soft enough, but hard enough. It's steel, and with practice, you can actually. So you need a spoon or a spatula shape, then a pointy shape, and then maybe a blade. The blade, actually, you can buy X-Acto blades and use them. Those work really well. So within like 3 tools, maybe 4, you're set to go. You don't need huge amounts of numbers. Basically, I accumulated all that, you know, with every commission or something like that that I would get. I needed something specific, I would go get it, I would make it. I didn't sit there and make all these tools all at once. That'd be nutty. So there's and basically in all these tools, I have literally 1 to 3 of my favorite tools that I always use. I always go to. The rest, they just sit there. So you're gonna find out pretty much the same. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever your body's comfortable with, that's pretty much what you're gonna go with. So within the heat tools, there's a set, and it literally is the pointed tool, the spatula, you know, and then the, you know, maybe a dish, you know, shape, which there's like a few different. If you buy it ready-made, these are what they look like. And you can get some of them from your art store for ceramics, for clay. Some of them that are made in metal work pretty well, but they just don't go small enough for jewelry. But if you're doing larger sort of tabletop sculptures, they work great. So the second set is the cold set, the cold working set. And that basically is, it comes down to cutters and scrapers. So, and basically a jeweler saw with a jeweler. This saw blade is for wax specific. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. It's not focusing well, but so it's a completely round, a cylinder type round saw blade, and it has teeth on all sides. A metal saw blade is rectangular, flat, and it has teeth on only one side, but it does cut. So you don't need a wax saw blade, you know, to cut with. But I have a saw blade that lasts me years for the wax, because it doesn't dull, it doesn't break, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there. If you buy, you know, a dozen of these saw blades, it's a lifetime worth of saw blades. Whereas in the metal saw blades, you cut one every hour. You break one every hour. So saw blades would help really well. And basically, you know, you're cutting wax material like this, which is hard carving blue wax. There is, you know, I'll show you the rest now. So in terms of, let me finish the tools of the cold. So saw blades in terms of cutting, and then also X-Acto blades work really well. Let me show you here. And little knives within that same set of from the jeweler supply. These knives come, and they're scrapers also. I like my, you know, X-Acto blade, so I made a handpiece for it, so that it gets even closer to the workpiece. But the X-Acto blades are great because you can just throw them away once they're dull. You can also use them hot, as in you can go into the flame, heat it up, and use it as a hot tool. And because you don't care if the steel got messed up, you can always, replace it.
Quick question. What size saw blades do you prefer?
So with the wax saw blade, there's only 3 sizes that you get. There's only 3 sizes that they make. And basically, none of it makes a difference because, I mean, the thinnest one is just too thin. The thickest one is, pretty beefy. The medium is good, but, depending on what type of work you're doing, and basically, you're going to cut. So right there, I mean, you're not cutting anything precise. You're just chomping down on the wax, getting a chunk out, cutting down the excess, and then going back in with your carving tools, which are the other set is files and rasps. So.
And these are wax specific files?
These are wax specific files. This you buy from a jeweler supply store, and one rough side and one fine side. But again, I have, that costs $25 or $10 or $50, whatever it is. If you buy it from India made, it's like $10. If you buy it Swiss made, it's 20, 25. So I have bought mechanics, basically mechanics rasps. I don't know if you can see how rough this is. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these are very large. This was 50 cents. So you can basically go down on Third and A&A abrasives. They sell these things. I'm sure they've gone up in price a little bit, like maybe $5. But I have a whole bunch of them that you can also get online and check them out. But mechanics, metal workers, rough rasps are, rough files are great for waxwork, because what you can also do is hold it on flat, and you can just basically onto your bench so it's solid, and you can basically go back and forth so you have flat, areas that you're trying to get. And this is a half round, so you can even do the same with a half round if the arc is the right arc. These things come, this is like a, I don't know, 14-inch. They come in 10, 12. So you have a choice of sizes. The other, in terms of the other types of files, rough for wax, are all these, tiny little ones that are called escapement files. Are these? They're
what are
really
they called
small.
again?
Escapement, as an escapement. You escape.
Oh.
It lets you escape. That's pretty much what I think of them when I'm calling it, or because basically they're so small and they're so miniature that there's no other tool that will actually do the job, and it's letting you do it, and saving you. Sort of. I'm sure there's another meaning for it in the British language, so it comes from the British language, not American. But the needle files, larger size, and they come in all kinds of sizes. So these are, and the difference is, so this is a needle file, and that's the size of the working surface. And this is a rough, pretty rough jeweler's file. It's a 0. So you can use it on wax, no problem, and it will last forever. These things are not cheap. They're $10, $20 each if you buy the Swiss made. But I have these things like for over 30 some years. I don't want to say 40 because then I'll feel old. But I have had them a very long time. They don't, for wax, they will not go, they won't dull. Now this is the escapement file, and this is where the little working area is, versus this is a needle file, and the working area is 4 or 5 inches. So when you're working, you know, getting in and out of little pieces of jewelry, little, you know, details of, let's say, if you were working on a realistic animal head or something like that, or, you know, so these are really, really good. The other, so apart from these three types of cold work, I was saying the scrapers. You know, this is another scraper that I made. It was a spatula in a dental set, and I just bent it and put an edge on it so I can scrape wax with it. Anything basically that you can put an edge on, it's, you know, it will work well, because wax is so soft. You don't, I mean, if you can put an edge on a butter knife, you're good to go. And that's pretty much what my, you know, anybody can do this. You know, you don't need specialized tools. And I like that idea better with that, because with that boundary, you can push yourself to being creative and really coming up with some amazing pieces. The more tools you have, the more confused you are. So there, secrets out.
Hratch,
So,
what is the difference between working cold and working hot?
okay, so working cold. So in any field, in terms of sculpture, in terms of, you know, I guess it's 3D, so you're gonna call it sculpture or sculptural work, miniature or whatever, however you look at it, goldsmithing or silversmithing. And goldsmithing is basically the art of, you know, all, you know, working in all materials from wood, plastic, metal, steel, and non-ferrous, as in copper, bronze, and all. The goldsmithing is a size, and silversmithing is a size, and then sculpture is a size. That's what it's, you know, it's not really the material that they're talking about when they talk about goldsmith or silversmith. In terms of the waxes, you know, when it's cold work, it's always being taken away, as in you're carving, shaving, you're taking away material. So you're cutting, you have a shape, you cut it down into that. When you're working hot, you're building up, as in fabrication, up, you know, you're going upward. You're not, you know, it's not
So
the negative.
you can add to it with
Right,
other wax?
right,
Okay.
right. So, so in terms of again, I'm just touching this real quick in terms of the tools. There's rotary tools which fit into your flex shaft, and there's many different kinds. The favorite and the best working one is actually these that are, I don't know if you're being able to see it or not. These are like, it has 3 fins. And again, the idea is they just gave it 3 fins of sheet metal with a little bit of edge. So when it's twirling away, it's ripping into that wax pretty fast. Let me put this away. And there's a few different styles. So there's, you know, this is a woodworking, you know, scraper, but I did purchase it, and I did want to see what it's going to do for me. Here we go. So when you're, so basically, you know, what the rotary tools are doing is just speeding up your process. It helps sometimes when you have bigger pieces to do, to remove materials really fast, but you're always going back to, you know, your scrapers and your files to clean up and put back in detail. Basically, the rotary tools, I don't push them at all in class, because it takes away its speed, but it's also incredibly fast to mess work up really, really quickly.
So it can be like imprecise.
Oh yeah, it is imprecise. It's absolutely. I mean, these are huge, you know, birds, comparing to these to do metalwork and stonework and whatever. I mean, this is just basically to take material down fast and get there quick. And sometimes you need to do that, But if you don't know how to use it, if you don't have enough practice, then it's extremely easy to mess up work really, really fast. But, wax is cheap. It's not like you're messing up gold or silver or copper, but it's too easy to do. You go through wax so fast that you'll be the other side of the piece within seconds. So I don't know if you guys can see that.
Is that wax?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
how did you get the texture?
Right. So the backside was hollowed out with one of these rotary tools. You can do a combination rotary tool, like a large bowl, as in, and they come larger, actually, much larger, like 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. So you can really bear down and do that. I don't like doing that much in wax because, the failure point is just you're getting further and further at the edge where you don't want to do that. So I usually leave that part. I take as much as possible or as safe as I can, and then I do the rest in metal, because metal is actually a little bit easier, safer to, and safer to clean in that way. The texture on top, basically, I came up with in terms of, so you have a form. Before I go ahead with, so in terms of the waxes, so there's different types of waxes. The hard wax, which is this material here, and it comes in a box like this, and it comes in sheet or slabs like this, which is like 1/8 inch, 16th inch, and you can cut things out fairly easily. As in, if you needed a shape, round shape, you cut that out. Then you put your texture on. Then you basically yikes.
Is that a rose?
Yeah. So basically, this was cut from a 1/2 inch, slab. This is not it. This would be. That's not it either, but really a fat piece. That's the height of the rose or the height of the piece. So you cut a round, right? Then you start shaping, and it's all drawn on there. You can either white paint, on the wax and then go back in by hand, draw it and put it on, or and go back in with your cutters and just start carving away. And if there's any mistakes, you can fix wax really easy. That's the other beauty part of the wax is, so you did cold work and you took too much off. You can actually go back in with hot work and add more wax on where you took too much off. If things break, you can actually go back in and repair with hot work. So, you can actually, so if the petals break or something happens to it, it becomes too, this is a little too beefy for my flavor, but.
So how do you do the texture in the wax?
Well, I don't know if you can see that, but that's a tiny little rose. So the texture, basically, that texture in the rose. So imagine this being a dome, like a full dome. So you start drawing the petals on, and then you go in and start hollowing out those areas where you want the petal to be sticking up. So you're basically shaving the petal down.
Yeah, no, I mean the texture of the other piece that you showed with the dome.
Okay. So that actually the sea urchin, these are sea urchins, and the sea urchin texture, I basically made this technique precision sort of. I came up with this technique, and I think almost every decent jeweler or goldsmith has something that they came up with, because they needed to. And so I had a very old, mentor, jeweler that gave me a piece of this wax from the olden times that they mixed wax and shellac, and I'd never seen anything like it. But it turned out that the dentists were using it for their industry for something or another. So I found a little bit and purchased it. Now, I don't know how much more are they going to be making this stuff, because they're not doing that technique anymore. I don't know. But basically, it's this wax. And I saw a lot of other people that are doing it on regular wax. I tried it, and it works. And basically, I had to make a tool that looks like a pen. I'm looking for it right now, as in a fountain pen. So, and that was the other revelation that I came to, where there was a company that made these pens, wax pens, that you basically shoved in a cylinder of wax in the back. It heated up with electricity, and then you actually drew, your lines and dots, whatever.
Like a hot glue gun.
Hot glue gun, but it was the tip was a pen. It was like, if it was a fountain pen where there was a cut right in the middle of the blade, or the tip. Here is it. I'm not even sure. Give me one sec. But if you can imagine a fountain pen, I don't know if you guys you must be familiar with fountain pens.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a cut in the middle. I'm not finding it. And basically, I heat up that blade, and I pick up wax with it. I don't have a reservoir that, takes the wax. I must have it somewhere else. I'm not seeing it here. I thought I had it, but oh, here it is. Yeah. So I really don't think you're gonna be able to see it, but it is like that, and this side is a little bit bigger. Can you see that at all?
Kind of. It's blurry,
Kind of.
but you can get a sense
covered
of it.
with wax, and there is a slit right down the middle in this, where I was just trying to imitate a fountain pen, nib. So basically, I'm going to put this on the arm. Hold on one second. Okay. So this is my homemade, baby jar alcohol lamp. You can buy these things for literally $5 at the jeweler's supply store. I don't know, I was feeling bored one night. So as you see, it's smoking away. That's the old wax that's on there. I don't know if you can see can you see it any better?
No, it's
No.
kind of blurry.
Yeah. It's too small for the camera, I guess. It would need something a little bit more powerful. But so the nib, if it doesn't have a slice in the middle, it's not going to pick up enough wax and basically what I do is, it's the tool and the wax itself, and I'm just going to use regular carving blue wax. And so I'm picking up actually, I can do it just right here.
So you're picking up wax when you do that?
Yeah.
Okay,
so
into the tool?
Can you see that?
A little bit, yeah, like there's
Can you see
wax
the lump?
on the tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So basically, it's very, very tedious work. Like in terms of this texture, I mean, this is specifically for this texture, as you asked, Vita.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I go back in, and the heat has got to be just right, and I start. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Just one little pimple. Okay.
Wow.
So I have a drawing, and I go all the way down next to each other, and lines and lines and lines and lines. It's very tedious work, but that's how, you know, here. And most of my, and you can make them different sizes. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So most of these are actually also got double, you know, so you do one row and then you go back on top. So it's a pimple on top of a pimple. And what that does is, you know, visually when you're looking at these things in metal, you know, the light that's actually, you know, being reflected off of, you know, if it's just one, it just looks blah. If it's two on top of each other for some reason, it just pops up. You know,
Cool. Wow, that is so much work.
It is, and that's why usually people are, you know, talking and asking about how do you do this and how do you do that. It's like it's basically a lot of patience. So, I mean, with these, it's the same thing. You know, I go in with smaller tools, rotary or knives, and basically I'm hollowing out, you know, back and forth. I don't know if this light is helping or not. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
So basically with the flex shaft in there, you know, I'm just hollowing these out. And it's rough and it's rough. So I start shaving it down, hollowing it out, but it's all drawn to begin with. I'm not, you know, just willy-nilly. I mean, I can do willy-nilly, but then, you know, it may or may not, you know, be completed. So with these, you know, again, this is a repeat. You know, I made the original and just got it molded so that, you know, I don't have to make the whole thing from scratch. But now I have a base ring, and I can just basically, you know, change the top, cut it off, and put something else on in terms of a new stone or like that. So for different settings. Yeah,
can
go ahead.
you talk a little bit about the process of where the wax model goes?
Okay, so
after it is completed.
So once the wax is finished, as in you're happy with it, you know, this is a ring. And this pretty much what happens to it. Turns into metal. So once the process of this wax is done and you're happy with, then you can either bring it, and I would absolutely encourage and suggest that you bring it to a professional casting house, because they will, you know, they'll do a great job. Some of them are better than others for sure. They're not all equal. But as far as the health issue is concerned, to what this does after you're done with, the wax needs to burn out. It's a burnout, you know, wax burning out, you know, system that they have that they use. So basically this wax goes into a stand with this, you know, this is called a sprue. So the sprue is basically, you know, attached to your wax, and that is in onto a base of wax, and it's sitting there, and a cylinder of, you know, steel cylinder comes and sits around it. So with this base, then they pour, you know, plaster, which is investment actually. It's a specific plaster that will take up to 1800, 2000 degree, you know, temperature. It needs to bake. So they pour the plaster on, it gets dried up overnight, then it goes into the oven and it gets baked out so that the wax is completely out of there and burnt out. And the plaster still needs to get, you know, back to temperature, down to 900 or 1000, depending on what metal you're casting. So once it's down to temperature, then the molten metal gets shot in. You know, there's either being shot in via centrifuge, or there's new systems now that are, you know, vacuum cast, where they're vacuuming it in. So the whole thing basically drops into a vacuum chamber, and the molten metal comes on top. So there is an actual vacuum inside that little hole that looks like the shape of your piece, and the metal is sucked into it. So they become, you know, very accurate in terms of casting. So and nowadays it's actually gone even further, much higher in process, where they're not even doing, they're actually spray, what do you call it? Spray printing, I guess, you know, so the, you know, and it's powdered metals. It's not, so it's going further and further up the ladder, which, you know, in terms of getting things done, it needs, once you get the metal back, you still need to clean it up and make things fit. It's still not ready and shiny and finished. You know, you still have to, once the metal comes back, you still have to work on it. So this piece was for this stone, and it still needs quite a bit of work. So I basically carved a wax for, you know, and made sure that this is going to sit. This still needs a bezel or a setting to be fabricated around to hold that stone in. But basically it's like that, where, so you have a stone and you, I mean, not necessarily you're going to do this, but I like using stones. So basically, you know, basically it's gonna, I'd make sure that it fits the piece, you know, generally, and I know how much it's going to take to do more fabrication after the piece is cast. So let's see. And in terms of so the waxes are, so there's also soft wax. So there's the carving wax in blocks. I should show you all of these. And they come, the carving wax comes in different hardnesses and different shapes. These are cylinders that you can actually cut, and, you know, to whatever width you want, and, you know, make your, so this one was, you know, I had to cut quite a wide band and carve it down. You can also fabricate upward, but I don't like fabricating too much when it comes down to shapes that, you know, so just carve it down, and it depends on speed and all that. Once it gets into production and commissions, it comes down to timing and all that. But if you notice on this one, the top is a little thicker than the bottom. So this is a complete cylinder, like totally round. So is this one. So if you needed or wanted to do some really funky carving on this, on the sides, you can on this one. This is not going to be as forgiving. You can build up if you need to, but so for rings, and you don't have to do that for rings. I mean, you can actually get a slab, drill a large hole, cut your circle out of a square block, you know, and make your ring out of that. You really don't need the cylinder. The cylinder is just for convenience's sake, for you know, whoever's producing, you know, in numbers, even when they're one of a kind. So wax also comes in sheet and different thicknesses and hardnesses. And the sheet is really fun because you can actually warm it up with your fingers and really do, you know, a lot of forming in the wax. So once, you know, you start playing, so you can literally bring it together, you know, put a weld line with wax with a little bit of heat. So you could really, you know, if you play with paper, then you can do this. I mean, you know, and think about, so this is a 4x4 square inch, you know, piece of wax. If you did 1-inch square and you did, with your little tools and did the same, you start making parts and pieces of, either you could do rings if I had these, so you can do, with sheet, just like sheet metal, you get yourself a template, put it down on there, cut the wax out. This is a cigar band ring. So you cut the wax out, form it around the mandrel, and you're ready to go. As far as, speed or, how easy this is in terms of, you would need to have your alcohol lamp to weld, spots. You can actually cut this flat, get it cast in metal, and then once it comes back in metal, then do your forming and soldering straight, in the metal. You could even do that, if you don't have or you don't want to do any hot work. So, but this is the sheet. You can do, if you can imagine doing like leaves or flowers. I've seen, a lot of people do, instead of these petals being carved, so they cut petals with scissors, really sharp scissors, and they basically go back to a round base and they hot glue, I guess I should say, or hot wax the petals back on. So you actually have no carving, but fabrication of little floral shapes, leaves, and stems. So this is the soft wax, which is a sculpture wax. It's very soft, brown. It comes in different thicknesses of, and the colors are, different in terms of pink and red and whatever. They change in hardness. These are good for repairs, or I don't like using this much because it gets really sticky really quick. And sometimes you actually lose it, even with body temperature. For sculpture, like larger pieces, it's great. But for jewelry, it's not so good. And then there's even, I wanted to show you guys this. So this is a block of wax, and this is for bracelets. So basically, the idea is if you slice this same as the ring, whatever width you want, then carved it, then it's 2 halves. So it's hinged, and that's how it's done. Usually I prefer, bracelets in straight metal, being banged around and just, forged out. But, if I'm doing something that's so, it can't be done in metal, or it's too expensive in the metal where there's going to be a lot of waste in terms of carving, then I would go to this. You could do a base, same with rings, you could do a base, and then add, your texture on it with little, leaf shapes or round shapes or whatever. So you can build, you can take away and, place a texture, or you can build up a texture. The other was, yeah.
Sorry, there's a question. In level of ease, how does wax compare to Delft clay sand casting and Cuttlefish?
Much easier, actually. I've done them all. So here's the thing about Delft clay is they all are limited. They are limited. You can't do undercuts, and you may be able to pull off undercuts and whatnot, but you have to be extremely experienced to do that. Delft clay is basically just clay. If it falls apart inside the chamber, then you're screwed. You have to start over. As far as and I mean, it's easy to do, but it's also the what you're getting out of it is very simplistic, designs. They're flat out. Most people start with that. Same exact thing with the Cuttlefish. And what I actually walked away from Cuttlefish was the fact that it's becoming scarce material because the fish are being so overfished that, each one of those is one fish. And, there isn't enough left. It's like, well, there's other ways to get to the same. Granted that you're not going to be able to, you know, press your piece of ring into the cuttlefish bone and then pour your metal in at home. But I have found an Australian company now that is doing very similar to, you know, what can be done in the cuttlefish. They're doing it in carbon, as in powder. So they're basically, they'll, you know, if you send them a design, they will make one of those that you can pour in carbon, as in graphite. So it's graphite powder that's being, you know, they'll just cut out a shape for you, or, you know, your model, and you can pour as many. It's not one-time use. You can use it as many times as it will take, and that's like at least 10 or 20 times. So whereas the cuttlefish is one-time use. The wax is easy because if you learn just the basic techniques, you can go so far with that and so complex with that. And you can only do the, you know, if you only do the cold work, then you can go far with that. If you only do the hot work, you can go long with that. And if you can mix and match, you're golden. The other one I was gonna say to you guys was, so here are little twigs. The other technique that, you know, I found, so at this point in the 80s and the 90s, the technology jumped into silicone and silicone molds. So what they did was basically they got, you know, any type of material. You didn't have to have your model made in plastic or in metal. So any biodegradable, any degradable material like these, or bugs, or whatever, you can actually get an impression of it in silicone molding, and then, you know, get this out, have these cast in metal, and then either form it to however you want, or leave it as is. So in terms of, I'm not pushing twig jewelry here, but I'm saying in terms of if you got to be just a little more creative, you can do so much, you know, with what's around you. And in terms of textures of the bark, you can actually go to a tree, take the bark, silicone mold it, come back, cut it into a shape or a form that you need, or you can use like a 4x4 sheet, and then get that silicone molded, so you now actually have a texture of a bark in sheet form that you can make jewelry out of. So the technology is so far ahead in that way. And this stuff is, if you can cut paper and cardboard, you can do this. And the tools are not, you know, out there as far as, you know, I mean, there's a lot of specialized tooling for jewelry. And I don't find them making life much easier as far as that. Some are, but if you don't know what they are, then you don't really need them. It's my philosophy. So, Rita, my next project will be a teapot. How's that? All right. I think we have a few minutes. Do we have any questions? Anybody there?
Sorry, I was muted. My question was, where's the best place to have casting done? Now you're muted. Oops. There you go.
Yeah. So I found out that most of the casters are opening up. They're open. They're ready to go. There's one here in town. And the other thing about casting is if you package it up and get it to your post office, no matter where you are, it's like New York is great. There's one in Virginia. It's called Hoover and Strong. They are fantastic, but they're also expensive. But their quality is unmatched. New York.
What was the name of that one?
Hoover, as in vacuum. Hoover and Strong.
Hoover and Strong?
Yep.
Okay.
And Philadelphia is Larry Paul is the casting house I would go to, and there's one called Rubbertone in Philly, all on Jewelers Row, one next to each other, like in the middle of the row. They're okay, they're good, they're convenient. They may have, I know Larry has no contact pickup and drop off, so you can do that. You can also ship it. And New York actually has a few casters that are opening up now. They're you know, I know that Larry Paul is open now. He was asking, so he's not the best, but he's convenient, and he will redo things if you're not happy with. And if you let him know, you know, I sent you there, because then you're a student of mine, then, you know, if he doesn't.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. So I was really interested in how you mentioned the silicone casting of like branches and just like things in nature. Can you describe the process again? Like, what materials do you need to do that?
Not much, actually. You just need your natural materials, whatever they are. It could be macaroni. You could use basically any type of glue. That's, you know, if you're gluing things together, if you're fabricating things, so that, you know, you come up with your own whatever it is that you're doing, and because the material, the silicone material, is poured in cold, and it's pretty inert, so it won't. It will hurt the material, the wood material a little bit. You know, some of the silicone will actually soak into the wood. But if you don't care about the model, then you're good to go.
So is that something that you need to send out for?
I would, because the silicone is not cheap. To buy it in you know, you can buy it in one gallon bottles. It's a 2-part, or 5-gallon you know, 2-part, and they're like hundreds of dollars. And if you bring it to the casting house, any casting house will do it for you. As you know, even sculpture casting houses will do it for you. You give them the model, whatever it is, and basically they will put the sprues or whatever they need to put, as in the sprues, so that you know, because they're going to end up taking the model out and then shooting wax in. So they need those openings, and they are pretty good at deciding where, as long as you tell them if there's any specifics on design that you don't want them touching, because it's hard to re-detail or re-clean up, then, you know, they'll not touch those areas, and they'll do something else for you, as far as, you know, the sprues are going to be put. So the sprues basically have to be on before the silicone is poured in or on. And again, the whole thing is on a cylinder, or in either a square or a rectangular box, or in a cylinder. They're pouring on the silicone molding material. It hardens overnight, or some of it, I think, is even you know, like aerated, so that the ultraviolet. So there's no heat involved at all. So you can literally use any material. You could do paper, you know, if it's not too delicate. Depending on the caster, to how good they are, they'll be able to actually, you know, do you any type of material. They just need to be delicate-handed, so that they don't mess up your design or your model.
One other question: how much does it cost to get these things cast in whatever?
Well, not including, you know, if I molded this piece, you know, as in a ring, or you know, which is this would be like $15 for the mold. $15 for the silicone mold, and then, you know, basically after it's done, then the model comes out. So $15 to $20 is basically the least amount, minimum, for a molding. And once it's done, then they shoot the wax into, and once you have the waxes, you can actually ask for the waxes back, so that you can manipulate the waxes, as in work on the waxes yourself and add or subtract or refabricate into whatever you need, a tiara or a ring, and then basically bring it back, and they'll cast that for you. So that's my theory or formula in terms of, if I needed parts or I see a texture in nature that I really love, I figure out how to basically either by tooling or by molding get that texture into my work. And I find that most molding in terms of technology now, and it's simple technology. It's not computerized. It's not it's nothing spectacular where it's going to cost an arm and a leg. It's literally silicone molding, where it's just two parts mixed, poured on. I've had people do it wrong, I should say that, where the silicone mold actually comes out too sticky, and within like 2 months it disintegrates on you. And then I've had silicone molds that are 20 years old and still going strong. So it depends on your casting house, and that's going to be a learning curve with each one of you. I mean, depending on who you're going to like or not. But the technology is pretty much the same. The material is pretty much the same. The creative part is what you're going to go crazy with.
Awesome. That's fascinating. Yeah. I love that process.
Yeah, and you could do parts. That was my other in terms of so you could do just one part, and then do 1,000 of these, literally thousands of these, and attach them and make an entire outfit or a piece of sculpture, or just one and do a ring. So in terms of that textural material, the idea of what happens, it's completely open, to your imagination.
Awesome. Amazing.
I have a question also. Is that
okay?
Possible?
Yeah, sure.
You showed us what you were planning to make into a teapot for the sea urchins.
Oh.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Are you going to?
I have a few of those that I wanted to do either. I mean, the first idea, and of course, classic idea, is teapot. The other idea was I'd seen French designers do nécessaires. I don't know if you know what a nécessaire is. It's these tiny little bags. So I thought, that'd be cool. A small handbag in metal.
Were you planning on doing it in silver or gold?
I would do silver. I mean, it needs to be affordable.
Right. It's wonderful. To make a whole.
But it's again, it's I'm not making these things. I mean, specifically, I'm not making these things to make money off of or sell. It's just basically just get completely creative and do these things, and something else will come off of it, or some other ideas will come off of it. That's all.
Awesome.
Your work is beautiful.
Thank you. Hope you guys, I'm not sure if anyone's interested in taking the summer course or the fall. I think this was maybe a precursor of that. I have no idea. Yeah.
Awesome, Hratch. Thank you so much. We're quite over time. Thank you so much for such an amazing demonstration.
Oh, no problem.
That was really incredible. And your work is so beautiful. We're lucky to have you at Fleisher. And yeah, summer course is still open if anybody's interested in wax carving and forming. You can learn from Hratch this summer. We're also going to do one in the fall. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Let me Vita, let me add, in terms of the courses, so this was just a webinar. In terms of the courses and classes, I will probably just go project by project, and I'll ask around if anyone's interested in a ring or this or that, and I'll just go from A to Z per project. So I'll show you the steps, of how to from A to Z versus in general.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Hratch. Stay safe, everyone. Have a great evening, and see you next week, hopefully. All right.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a good night.